The stars stretched endlessly across the black void, twinkling like tiny diamonds scattered on a giant black cloth. On the bridge of the starship Virelia, the T-Krill crew moved quickly, their long, green-scaled hands sliding over the glowing panels. The ship hummed softly, a gentle vibration under their feet, but there was tension in the air. Something was wrong. Captain Lyari stood at the command console, her sharp eyes scanning the holographic display. She was proud of her crew, proud of their history of exploration and discovery. But now they were trapped in a nebula, far from their allies, with systems failing one by one. The T-Krill had seen many storms in space, but this was unlike anything they had ever faced. The nebula's radiation twisted sensors, scrambled communications, and made navigation nearly impossible. Lyari tapped a few commands, trying to stabilize the ship. "We need help," she said softly. It was not a question. It was a plea. Her voice echoed slightly in the bridge, but no one replied. They all understood. Everyone knew the danger they were in. The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Riel, looked nervous. His claws hovered over the console as he prepared to send the distress signal. "Coordinates ready, Captain," he said. "Shall I send it now?" Lyari hesitated. Sending the SOS felt risky. Their allies were far, and there was no guarantee help would come in time. But she had no choice. "Do it," she said. "We have no other option." The T-Krill were careful and precise, but even the smallest mistake in space could be deadly. Unknown to them, a tiny miscalculation in the signal's coordinates had sent their SOS far off course, deep into uncharted space. The distress call carried their fear, their hope, and their vulnerability, but it was heading straight toward the territory of the Cairn. The Cairn were legendary across the galaxy. They were the Deathworlders, a species feared for their cruelty and vast war fleets. No civilized race dared approach them without caution. Yet the T-Krill, innocent and focused only on survival, did not know this. To them, it was a simple call for help to distant friends. Across hundreds of light years, the SOS signal flickered on a massive holographic display in the Cairn warlord Thaxu's command ship. His dark eyes scanned the message. There was no mistake, no confusion. A species calling for help. Weak. Vulnerable. Perfect. His clawed fingers tapped the console, sending orders to awaken the Armada. Thaxu's fleet was enormous, countless ships that could blot out stars. Every vessel was armed and ready for war, and now the Cairn were moving, guided by a single accidental message from an unsuspecting species. Back on the Virelia, the T-Krill had no idea what was coming. The crew repaired minor hull damage from the nebula and patched system errors, their minds focused on survival. Lyari leaned against the railing, feeling a strange weight in her chest. Fear, yes, but also a flicker of hope. If help arrived, maybe they could escape this storm alive. The SOS had been sent. And across the galaxy, far beyond the nebula's glowing clouds, something had answered, something they could never have imagined. For now, all was calm. The ship floated silently in the swirling mist of the nebula, its lights reflected in the strange gas clouds. But in the dark void beyond, shadows were stirring. The Cairn Armada moved like a tide of steel and fire, coming closer with every moment. Lyari did not yet know that the simple act of sending a message, a plea for help, had changed everything. It would bring the T-Krill face to face with one of the deadliest forces in the galaxy. It would test their courage, their wits, and their will to survive. And somewhere deep in her heart, Captain Lyari felt a whisper of fear. A warning she could not yet name. The galaxy was about to show her how small, how fragile, and yet how remarkable her species could be. The Virelia drifted deeper into the nebula, its hull glowing faintly from the scattered light of nearby stars. The T-Krill crew moved like shadows, repairing damage, checking sensors, and whispering to themselves in their native language. The tension on the ship was thick, almost tangible. Every alarm beep made hearts skip a beat, and every flicker on the sensors felt like a warning of the unknown. Captain Lyari stood at the command console, her eyes scanning the swirling clouds outside. She had felt fear before, during storms, during close encounters with rogue asteroids, even when exploring new planets. But this was different. This fear had teeth. It gnawed at her insides, sharp and constant. She had a sick feeling that something out there beyond the gas clouds was watching. Then the first shadow appeared on the long-range scanners. It was small at first, just a dot in the distance, but moving fast. Lieutenant Riel's claws trembled as he zoomed in on the readings. "Captain, I don't think these are friendly," he said, his voice low. Liari leaned closer, frowning. "What are they?" Riel shook his head. "I don't know, but their energy signatures are aggressive. They're not like anything we've seen before." A shiver ran down Liari's spine. She had expected trouble, yes, but she hadn't imagined the vast scale of it. Within moments, the dot became a fleet. Triangular ships, black as the void, appeared like shadows emerging from the nebula itself. There were hundreds of them, maybe more. Their size and formation left no doubt they were hunters. Predators. Liari swallowed hard. Riel, raise shields. Activate evasive protocols, and contact them. Try to communicate. Riel nodded, fingers flying across the console. "Message prepared, Captain. I hope they understand." The Virelia's communications array crackled to life. A holographic display shimmered as Liari pressed the final command. "This is Captain Liari of the starship Virelia. We are in distress. We request assistance. Please respond." Silence followed. The nebula seemed to hold its breath. Then a voice boomed through the ship's speakers, harsh, guttural, and cold. "Assistance? You called us?" Liari's heart froze. Her green-scaled hands tightened on the railing. "Yes, we are lost." "We need help," the voice laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Help you will get. We will bring you help, little ones. Help you do not expect." Riel's claws tightened around his console. "Captain, they're huge, far larger than anything in the Tekrel fleet. We can't fight them. Not alone." Liari's mind raced. Every simulation, every tactical exercise, every drill she had done in her life, all of it seemed useless. The Karn were overwhelming. The numbers alone were terrifying, and their aggression made them even more dangerous. Yet beneath her fear, a spark of determination ignited. She would not let her crew die without a fight. "We survive," she whispered to herself. "No matter what, we will survive." The Karn ships began moving closer, a tide of black cutting through the stars. The Virelia's engines hummed louder, shields flickering under the strain. Every moment felt stretched into eternity, and every decision could be the last. Liari turned to her crew. "Stay calm. Follow my orders. We will find a way through this or die trying, but we will not give up." The crew nodded, fear and resolve in their eyes. They had never faced anything like this before, yet they trusted their captain. Trust, Liari realized, could be stronger than any weapon. The first contact had been made. The galaxy had spoken, and the Tekrel had no choice but to answer. For now they were alive. But the question loomed over them like a dark cloud. How long could they survive against a fleet of death? The nebula glowed around them, hiding the fleet's movements, hiding the shadows that were closing in. The Virelia floated like a small candle in a storm, fragile but burning, holding on to hope in a galaxy that had just turned its face toward darkness. The shadows of the Karn Armada stretched across the nebula like a dark storm, swallowing the faint glimmer of distant stars. The Virelia's shields pulsed as the first energy scan swept over them, testing the ship's defenses. Every heartbeat on the bridge felt heavier than the last. Fear hung in the air like thick smoke, but Captain Liari refused to let it control her. "Evasive maneuvers," she barked. "All thrusters, full power. Keep us moving." The Tekrel crew scrambled, their scaled hands moving over panels, sliding levers and flipping switches. The Virelia shuddered as the engines roared in response. Around them, the nebula's gases twisted and swirled, creating a shifting labyrinth that could hide them or crush them. Lieutenant Riel's voice was tense. "Captain, they're faster than predicted. They're surrounding us, cutting off escape routes." Liari's stomach twisted. Every instinct told her they were in grave danger. The Karn were not only hunting them, they were methodical, intelligent, and patient. Every movement of the Virelia seemed anticipated. Every maneuver was countered. It felt like swimming in a net of invisible steel. The bridge shook as a warning alarm blared. A distant Karn ship fired a plasma volley, slicing through the nebula clouds. The shots barely missed, but the near miss tore at the Virelia's outer hull. Sparks flew across the panels, and crew members leapt back to avoid being burned. Liari gritted her teeth. "Raise shields! Divert all power to defense. Do not panic." The Tekrel obeyed, but the tension was almost unbearable. Every second counted. Every misstep could mean destruction. Liari watched as the massive Karn fleet moved with the precision of a predator. Their black hulls reflected the nebula's glow. making them look almost alive, like a school of immense sea creatures hunting a small, fragile fish. "Captain," Riel said, pointing to the sensors. "They're converging. I think they're herding us somewhere, like prey." Layari's heart sank. She had feared this. The Karn were not mindless. They were hunters. They wanted control, domination, perhaps even study. The thought of being captured alive was almost worse than dying, but surrender was not an option. Liari's mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be something they could do to survive this impossible chase. Her eyes scanned the ship's systems, searching for a solution, any advantage. "Riel," she said, voice steady despite the fear tightening her chest. "Prepare the cloaking prototype. We don't have much time. If we can activate it, it might buy us a chance to escape." Riel's eyes widened. "The prototype? But it's untested in combat. It could fail, and it's our only hope," Liari interrupted. "Do it now." The Tekrel worked furiously, wiring power cells, calibrating the energy field, and adjusting the sensors. The hum of the ship shifted, a strange vibration that made the crew's scales tingle. Lights flickered as the prototype activated, and the Viralia shimmered, becoming almost invisible against the nebula's clouded backdrop. The Karn fleet slowed, scanning, confused by the sudden disappearance of their target. "Where did it go?" Thaxu's voice thundered across the void. "Find it, it cannot escape us." Liari allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. "It's not over," she said quietly to her crew, "but we've bought ourselves a chance. Stay ready." For the first time, a flicker of hope glimmered amid the fear. The Viralia drifted through the nebula's twisting clouds, invisible to the hunters that pursued them. But they all knew it was temporary. The Karn were patient. The Armada was vast. Any mistake could cost them everything. Liari's eyes swept over her crew, each of them tense but determined. She felt pride, warmth, and a strange courage rising inside her. They were small, fragile, and alone against an armada of death, yet they were not giving up. They had survived this far, and maybe, just maybe, they could survive what came next. The chase had begun, and the galaxy watched silently. The nebula stretched around the Viralia, twisting in colors of green, violet, and silver. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic, but Liari had no time to admire it. Every second in the swirling clouds could mean life or death. The Karn Armada was still out there, vast and relentless, searching for the small, shimmering shape of their prey. Captain Liari stood at the command console, her claws clenched around the railing. The hum of the ship's engines felt louder than ever, a constant reminder that they were still alive for now. She knew the Karn were patient hunters. They would not leave until they had captured or destroyed the Viralia. Every strategy she had studied, every drill her crew had practiced, seemed hopeless against such overwhelming numbers. "We cannot outrun them," Liari said softly, almost to herself. "Not like this. Not without something more." Lieutenant Riel, sweat running down his scaled face, tapped furiously at the controls. "Captain, the cloaking prototype might buy us time, but it's unstable. We can hide, yes, but we cannot fight while hidden, and the Karn will adapt. They always do." Larry's mind raced. She had one chance, and it was risky, terrifyingly so, but they had no other option. She turned to the crew, her voice firm and commanding. "We use the cloaking prototype, not just to hide, to escape, but we must also prepare a diversion. If we can split them, confuse them, we might survive. Every second counts. Every move matters." The crew's tails twitched nervously. They had never tested the prototype in combat. Every system was experimental, yet their trust in Liari was unshakable. Nods and murmurs of agreement spread across the bridge. They would follow her lead. They had no choice and no other hope. The Tekrel worked like a single organism. Power cells were rerouted, energy shields adjusted, and the cloaking field activated. The Viralia shivered, then shimmered, fading almost completely into the nebula's swirling clouds. Liari exhaled, feeling a small measure of relief. "Good," she whispered. "Now, the diversion." Using the nebula's dense clouds as cover, the Tekrel fired decoy energy flares and released probe drones in multiple directions. Lights flickered and danced like fireflies, drawing the attention of the Karn fleet. The Armada hesitated, unsure where the real ship had gone. A few Karn vessels altered course, chasing the decoys, leaving gaps in their formation. Liari's heart raced. This was dangerous. If any decoy failed, the Viralia could be spotted instantly. "Steady," she said. "Patience. Move slowly but deliberately. Wait for the opening. Minutes felt like hours as the ship drifted silently, invisible but vulnerable. The nebula's gases glimmered around them, hiding the Viralia like a jewel in a dark sea. Liari's green eyes scanned every sensor, every shadow, ready for the slightest sign of danger. Then a gap appeared, a narrow path between the Karn vessels. Liari's claws tightened on the railing. Now full impulse. Through the gap. The engines roared, sending the ship surging forward. The shields flared as energy pulses from nearby Karn vessels brushed past them, but the Viralia slipped through the narrow corridor. Sparks danced across the hull, and the nebula's gases reflected the ship's shimmering energy, making it almost impossible to track. The bridge erupted with cheers and relieved gasps. For the first time in hours, the crew allowed themselves a brief smile. But Liari did not relax. She knew this was only temporary. The Karn would regroup. The Armada was massive. They could not stay invisible forever. Still, hope glimmered. The Tikrel had survived one impossible moment, and that small victory gave them courage. Liari looked at her crew, scared, exhausted, but alive. They had faced overwhelming odds and found a way, if only just barely. The chase was not over. The danger was not gone. But the Viralia still sailed, a tiny flicker of light in the darkness holding on to life by a thread. And in that fragile survival, Liari felt something she had almost forgotten. Determination. They would fight. They would survive. And perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy had more allies waiting in the shadows than they could imagine. The Viralia slipped through the nebula, shimmering faintly in the colored gases, barely visible even to the sharp sensors of the Karn Armada. Captain Liari's claws still gripped the railing, her chest tight with tension. The crew moved cautiously, every scale and tail twitching with alertness. They had survived the first wave of the chase, but the Karn were intelligent hunters. Liari knew it was only a matter of time before they regrouped. Suddenly, Lieutenant Riel's claws hovered over the sensor console. "Captain, something's coming from the outer rim. Ships? I've never seen their signatures before." Liari leaned forward, narrowing her eyes at the holographic display. At first, they were small, distant blips, almost insignificant against the darkness of space. But they moved fast, elegantly, and with an unmistakable purpose. "Are they hostile?" she asked, her voice tight. Riel shook his head. "I don't think so. Their energy readings, they're different. Not aggressive, but they're coming straight for us." Liari's heart leapt. Could it be allies? After all the fear, after all the tension, hope flickered for the first time. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. "Identify them. We need help if they can give it." The display shimmered and a human voice came through the speakers, clear, confident, and calm. "This is Commander Hayes of the starship Aurora. We received a distress signal. Unknown origin. We're coming to assist. Hold tight, humans." Liari blinked, almost unable to believe it. She had heard stories of humanity, brave, daring explorers, fearless in the face of danger. But she had never imagined they would appear now, at this critical moment. Her scales tingled with disbelief and relief. "Human ships?" she whispered to Riel. "They're real, and they're coming," Riel said, awe in his voice. The Karn Armada had not expected interference. Their black ships cut through the nebula like predators, but the humans moved differently. Smaller, faster, more maneuverable. They darted through the swirling gases, positioning themselves between the Viralia and the Karn. Within moments, a few of the Karn vessels fired, but the humans responded with precision. Energy pulses streaked through the nebula, striking the enemy's ships with pinpoint accuracy. Liari felt a rush of emotion she had not experienced in years. Hope, awe, gratitude. "They fight like no one I've ever seen," she whispered. The human ships continued their assault, weaving through the nebula with incredible skill. Their movements were unpredictable yet coordinated, a dance of strategy and courage. The Karn fleet faltered, their massive numbers slowed by the humans' fearless attacks. Explosions lit up the nebula, and debris from Karn vessels drifted like falling stars. Liari turned to her crew, a wide smile breaking through her tension. "Prepare for maneuvering. Follow their lead. They're going to show us how to survive." The Tikrel followed the humans' instructions, their own skills amplified by guidance. Shields were redirected, energy cannons fired in tandem, and small decoys launched to confuse the Karn. Slowly, the tide began to shift. The Karn were strong, yes, but the humans were clever, fearless, and relentless. Liari's heart swelled with admiration. She had always believed in the courage of her own people, but she now understood something deeper. Bravery could take many forms, and even the smallest species could make a difference when allied with others who fought for life itself. Through the chaos, Liari caught glimpses of individual human pilots, grinning, shouting, focused. They were risking everything for strangers they had never met, for a species that had been almost invisible to the galaxy until now. It was a courage born not of strength or domination, but of principle. The Virelia's crew felt their own spirits rise. For the first time in hours, hope was no longer a fragile flicker. It was a flame. With the humans' intervention, the impossible chase seemed manageable. They could survive. They could fight. They could live to see another day. Liari looked out at the nebula, at the humans weaving through the black Karn ships, and whispered a silent thanks. Humanity had answered a call not meant for them, and in doing so they had given the Tikrel a chance. A real chance. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and often cruel. But in this moment, Liari realized something profound. Courage, kindness, and the willingness to act, even in the face of unimaginable odds, could shine brighter than any weapon. And now, for the first time, the Virelia had allies who shared that light. The nebula glowed around the Virelia, colors twisting like a living river of light. The Karn Armada was still massive, but the humans moved with unmatched speed and skill. Their smaller ships darted through the clouds, striking with precision and vanishing before the Karn could respond. Captain Liari watched in awe from the command console, her green-scaled hands trembling slightly from a mix of fear and excitement. This is incredible, she whispered to Lieutenant Riel. They fight without fear, without hesitation. How can anyone be that brave? Riel shook his head, eyes wide. They're human. They fight for life itself, not for territory or power. That's why they're different. Liari nodded, her mind racing. If the humans could fight like this, then maybe, just maybe, they could survive. The Virelia wasn't just hiding anymore. They were moving again, following the humans' lead. Shields were repositioned, energy weapons charged, and decoys launched in perfect timing to confuse the Karn. The Armada faltered. Their massive ships were powerful, yes, but their tactics were rigid. The humans exploited every weakness, weaving through gaps, targeting command vessels, and striking at weak points. Explosions tore across the nebula, debris drifting like falling stars. The Tikrel could feel the Karn's frustration, even through the sensors. They were not invincible. Liari's heart pounded. She had never felt anything like this, hope, fear, and exhilaration all at once. Her crew was inspired. They moved with purpose, following orders. Their earlier terror replaced by determination. We fight, she said softly. We survive. We do not give up. The humans coordinated their attacks with remarkable precision. Small groups split off to flank the Karn vessels while others drew their attention, creating openings for the Tikrel ship. The Virelia's weapons, once defensive and hesitant, now struck with confidence. Guided by the humans' strategy, Thaxu, the Karn warlord bellowed orders across the fleet, but his massive armada was slow to adapt. Impossible, he roared. They are insignificant. How can they resist? Destroy them all. But the humans were relentless. They moved like a storm, striking again and again, never stopping, never tiring. Their bravery and cunning were unmatched, and the Tikrel realized something extraordinary. Courage was contagious. The humans had ignited a spark in them. Liari felt a swelling of pride. Her crew, once panicked and desperate, now fought with focus and heart. They were no longer alone. Together with the humans, they had a chance to survive the impossible. Every strike, every maneuver was a testament to cooperation, courage, and the determination to protect life. The Karn fleet began to falter. One by one, their ships fell, either destroyed or forced to retreat. Their formations broke under the humans' tactical genius and the Tikrel's renewed courage. Liari watched as the Armada scattered, no longer a unified threat but a fleeing mass. For the first time in hours, the nebula seemed peaceful. Smoke and debris drifted slowly across the glowing clouds, but the immediate danger had passed. The Virelia floated, battered but alive, shielded by the humans' presence. Liari's heart swelled with gratitude and awe. She turned to her crew. Look at them, she said softly. These humans, They fight not for conquest, not for glory, but for what is right. They've saved us all. Riel's eyes shone. They're incredible. We never imagined such courage existed outside our own species. Liari nodded, feeling a quiet hope. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and unknowns, but she had witnessed something remarkable. Even in the darkest moments, courage, selflessness, and determination could turn the tide. The humans had proven that life was worth fighting for, no matter how small, fragile, or hopeless it seemed. And in that moment, the Tekrel realized something profound. Survival was not just about technology, numbers, or strength. It was about heart, bravery, and the willingness to act when everything seemed lost. The Karn had underestimated them, underestimated the power of courage and unity. And now, for the first time, the Tekrel dared to believe they might truly survive. The nebula lay quiet now, the swirling colors reflecting softly on the Virelia's scarred hull. The battle was over. The Karn Armada had retreated, broken and scattered across the void. Silence filled the ship, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the quiet of relief, exhaustion, and awe. Captain Liari stood at the observation deck, staring at the fading glimmers of light where the battle had raged. Her green-scaled hands rested on the railing, trembling slightly from adrenaline. She had never felt such a mix of exhaustion, gratitude, and wonder. Their small, fragile ship had survived against overwhelming odds. They had been saved not by numbers, not by superior weapons, but by courage, and by allies who had risked everything for them. A human voice came through the comms, calm and friendly. "Captain Liari, are you okay? We've cleared the immediate threat. You're safe now." Liari smiled faintly. "Yes, and thanks to you." "I don't know how to thank you enough." Commander Hayes' voice carried a warm chuckle. "No need to thank us. That's what explorers do. We help where help is needed." Liari felt her chest swell. Help where help is needed. That simple idea, so rare in the galaxy, had saved them all. Her crew gathered around her, exhausted but alive. They looked at the human ships with awe and newfound respect. For the first time, the Tekrel realized that the galaxy was not just a place of danger. It was a place where courage, honor, and friendship could shine brighter than any weapon. Lieutenant Riel stepped forward, voice quiet but filled with emotion. "Captain, they didn't know us. They didn't know us anything, and yet they risked everything. I've never seen anything like it." Liari nodded, pride and wonder in her eyes. "Neither have I, and that is why we survive. Not just because we fight, but because there are beings out there who will stand for what is right, who will fight for life even when it is not their own." The Tekrel crew slowly began to repair the ship, but there was laughter now, soft but genuine, blending with the hum of engines and the faint whispers of relief. Liari watched her crew and felt a warmth in her chest. They had faced death and despair together, and they had survived. They were stronger, braver, and more united than ever before. The human ships lingered nearby, scanning for any signs of remaining danger. Liari noticed something remarkable. They did not linger to conquer or to take credit. They stayed simply to ensure safety, to protect life, and then they would leave as quietly as they had arrived. That was humanity. That was courage. That was hope. Liari turned back to the stars, watching the nebula fade into darkness. She whispered to herself a promise more than anything. "We will remember this. We will learn, and we will fight to live no matter what comes next." The galaxy was vast and full of danger, but in that moment, Liari understood something essential. Even the smallest voice could echo across the stars. Even the weakest could survive if courage and determination burned brightly enough. The humans had shown them that life was worth defending, and that lesson would guide the Tekrel for generations to come. For the first time in her life, Liari felt real hope. Not a fragile spark, not a fleeting flicker, but a steady flame. The galaxy was vast, yes, and full of unknown dangers, but together, with courage and allies who fought for what was right, the Tekrel could face anything. They could survive. They could thrive. She turned to her crew one last time, seeing relief, pride, and wonder mirrored on their faces. "We are alive," she said softly, "and that means we can choose to be more than survivors. We can choose to be strong, brave, and maybe even heroes in our own way." The humans waved from their ships, and Liari waved back, a silent promise of gratitude and understanding. Across the vast expanse of space, a connection had been forged, not by chance alone, but by courage, trust, and the will to act in the face of fear. And as the Virelia sailed forward, repaired and renewed, Lyari knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy was dangerous. Yes, but hope, bravery, and unity could shine brighter than any darkness, and sometimes even the smallest species could change the course of destiny.